Hello, speculators. What is going on? Thanks for everybody who's tuning into this impromptu stream. I haven't actually done this in a while. I didn't get to have our show yesterday, FSP. Honestly, I had just been really stressed with work and stuff, and it's just like I wasn't feeling well last night. So, I just needed to try and wind down and take it easy, stuff like that. But there's a lot of stuff that happened today, and I feel like talking about it. So guess what? I'm just here live. So appreciate all the speculators, all you guys here hanging out. Thank you so much. We're gonna have fun. I'm gonna be diving into a couple of these topics that have gone wild on the internet today. Some really good stuff to talk about. Not necessarily good news. Actually, kind of bad news if you really want to look at it. But first, before we get started, I want to say again, thank you to everybody in the chat. And I see you guys, Tony, Game Pass Dad. Thank you guys for already stopping in here. And anybody who's going to be watching this after the fact, I appreciate all of you as well. I want to say before we get into this too much, I made a tweet because I saw something on the on Twitter today, and it bothered me. I saw it early this morning. And there was a streamer that I had started following pretty recently, up and coming streamer, and thought they were talented. I had some good stuff, and I had been checking them out. I was like, wow, this is really awesome. They're doing great, and just kind of like keeping an eye on them and respecting their content. And then today I saw a post that they had made that really kind of grossed me out, I guess. I don't know what you want to say. I don't know what you want to call it. I don't know if I was really put off by it. It's a sense of entitlement or something that some people have. I don't know what it is, but this person was basically criticizing people that stop by his streams for not following from the beginning. And I'm like, I don't understand that. Like, you go out there and you try and do what you can. You go and you try and make as good stuff as you can, or what you have time for, and what I mean, you're having fun. And for me, the tweet I made is I just want everybody to know that ever watches any of our stuff, I do not expect anything from anybody. Any kind of support, or anybody even stopping by for a second or watching. I say this before every stream. I appreciate you. Either with live or after the fact, if you hit the like button, if you share, if you subscribe, and notification, but all that stuff, whatever, right? It means a lot, and I appreciate all of that. But that is never an expectation that anybody should have, right? If you come in, you spend any time watching, even if it's for a second, I'm like, hey, that's amazing. Thank you so much for coming here and even stopping by. I mean, that's crazy. Without an audience at all, you have no platform, whatever. And I could still be sitting here talking to myself, day one type content. And if people are out there liking it, commenting, sharing, whatever, that's great. I appreciate all that stuff, but it's not an expectation. And people out there that are chastising people that are just now starting to see their content. And even if the people are like, oh yeah, I've been following you from the beginning, and you think they weren't, it doesn't matter. You don't have to call them out. You know what I mean? It's just be appreciative. Just be appreciative of anybody that has anything to do with you, right? Because there's so many, you guys right now, shout out to Geezer, Andrew, my lovely wife, Kaylin. Any of you guys could be anywhere. There's 3 or 4 different live shows going on right now, at least, where that I know of, people that I'm friends with in the community that are live with podcasts right now, right? So you could be there, you could be here, you could be wherever, and that's okay. You know what I mean? So the fact that you even take a second, and regardless if you're new, if you're been around here from the beginning, it doesn't freaking matter. It doesn't matter. I just appreciate everybody. I just wanted to make that clear, because I don't talk about that stuff enough, but that just really rubbed me the wrong way. When I saw that tweet, I actually instantly went and unfollowed from the Twitch. I unfollowed from Twitter. everything. I mean, just like I can't stand when people talk like that about themselves. You know what I mean? Just don't get it. But Drawn TJ, shout out to you. Thanks for the $10 super chat, dude. He says, "Hi Mav7. With Aspyr putting production on hold, do you think Microsoft should approach them and say, hey, we want to help and pay more than Sony? Keep up the awesome content, bro." Hey, thanks, Drawn TJ. Let's get it. Speaking of that, so let's get into some of these topics right now. Ooh, Andrew Cullinane. Oh shit, dude said can't sleep. Your whole family has COVID. Man, I'm sorry to hear that, bro. Hopefully, hopefully everybody is doing okay and gets through that as quickly as possible. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for keeping you entertained. I try my best. I'm what you call a selfish podcaster or selfish streamer, because like I just talk about the shit that I want to. I need to do better at like thinking about, hey, what is my audience going to find entertaining? So it means a lot that you guys find this stuff entertaining for sure. All right, so getting into this, I'm going to go into the bring up this article here. Okay, so got this article from The Verge. Shout out to The Verge, one of the better sites, I think, at least. It has some pretty good content. So they go on and they talk about this. I've seen it all over Twitter. I saw Jason Schreier comment on this. I've seen lots of people chime in, and I was shocked, right? So supposedly, the development of Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, the remake that is supposed to be for PS5 console exclusive and PC, is being put on hold. And the game's art director and the designer director were also fired earlier this month. And the way that this is interesting is it was directly after showing a demo to Lucas Film and Sony. Shout out to Jay Peters, who actually had written this article. And again, you can find this one on TheVerge.com. So, according to The Verge, the Knights of the Old Republic remake was first announced at Sony's big fall showcase last September. I remember that, and it was a big shock. You know, Xbox fans around the world were like, "What? Sony got the freaking remake of KOTOR, one of like the OG Xbox's original like great games. One of the games a lot of people consider one of the best games ever made. Actually, if you see best of all time list, you'll see KOTOR on a lot of people's, right? And this was like, whoa." KOTOR remake is being made by Sony? That was crazy. Now, I remember seeing the dev, and I remember talking about this on one of the podcasts. It was Aspyr, however you say it. And I was like, wow, that's an interesting choice. You know, I know they've done like ports and stuff like that of Star Wars games and things like that, but you know, taking on a title like KOTOR remake, you know, like that's a big task. That's a big undertaking, and I couldn't recall anything that they had done that would be anywhere near close to the magnitude of this type of project. I mean, you're talking about remaking one of BioWare's most classic games of all time, and to a lot of people, one of the best games ever made. And you're talking about a remake, right? So apparently they had this demo where they had to sit and show the vertical slice to Lucasfilm and Sony, and they were very proud of what they were about to show. And then immediately after that, the art director and the design director were fired. So I mean, this doesn't happen very much, especially after a huge game like this that just recently got announced. Maybe they should have waited to announce it a little bit, and maybe until after they saw the vertical slice. I don't know, but this is recent news that this has happened in this last month. So it says the developer Aspyr Media, which is owned by Embracer Group, which they got acquired by Embracer Group last year, and they're actually under the Saber Interactive part of Embracer Group. So they got acquired, put under Saber, and this project was revealed and announced and stuff, and now it's put on hold. Yeah, that's a whirlwind of activity in a very short time span, right? So it says the remake has been in development for 3 years, and while the original plan was to release the game by the end of 2022, a more realistic target they had said was now 2025. Wow. So that's a ways off. I mean, I remember thinking that this game, because it had been in development for a while, was not going to be so far away. But according to that, the um, development wasn't going well, right? So Saber Interactive, another Embracer Group studio, is also helping with the development. And Bloomberg says that some at Aspyr, what I still don't know how to say that properly, Aspyr, uh, believe that Saber could take over. So maybe Aspyr is being removed from the development. Saber Interactive is going to be taking over the development. Aspyr, Embracer Group, and Sony didn't immediately reply to a request for comment. While the original Kotor was released in 2003 and was developed by BioWare, Aspyr is quite familiar with the game and its sequel, as it worked on ports of both. This is why a lot of people were like, oh, they're a great choice because, they've worked on ports. But, porting a game is not necessarily creating something from scratch, right? And this was going to be a test. And this is like, okay, you get one of the best games of all time, according to a lot of people, and you're going to assign this team to remake it that's never had their own, like, big, huge, massive standalone game like this. And that I found it kind of curious. And it seems like maybe it wasn't the right move to go with Aspyr to begin with. I'm not sure. I don't want to be disrespectful to that studio whatsoever. However, this is very interesting now and maybe shows why Xbox wasn't as interested in this project to begin with. Sony being involved to get that exclusivity. Now maybe who knows when this game is going to come out, if it ever does see the light of day. Some of the original KOTOR team is also on board for the remake, supposedly. Aspyr's Ryan Treadwell wrote in a PlayStation blog post, but the game will be a console exclusive for PS5 when it launches. There was also questions about how long the exclusivity was going to be for, because it was being Sony was involved with the publishing and everything like that. I think that some would say it might be indefinite, but that had not ever been officially announced yet. So the KOTOR remake is just one of the many big Star Wars games in development. There's a lot of Star Wars games in development. There's this David Cage game that's supposed to be having trouble right now as well. And there's this game that Ubisoft's supposed to be having a game made by Massive in the Snowdrop engine that's supposed to be pretty crazy. And let's see, there is the Amy Hennig game as well for their new studio. Lots of different Star Wars projects across the board. So it's interesting that this is happening with this game, though. I don't know what the spells for the future of this franchise, the future of this game, and maybe they're going to be looking at something else. Like John TJ said, with the super chat again, he said, do you think Microsoft should approach them and say, hey, we want to help and pay them more than Sony? I don't know if that's possible. I don't know, like, the legal stuff. Like, I don't know if you can just, like, undo a contract like that. But maybe it would be something where Sony could potentially decide that they wanted to move on from it. At that point, does somebody else pick it up? That could be a possibility. Or they just, revisit Ground Zero. I think this is a big project. I think this is, like, a very fan-forward focused project, something that's going to grab a lot of attention. So for me personally, I don't see Sony backing away from it right now. I think it could see the light of day eventually, but I think they're going to have to figure out what's going on with the development, and maybe the game just wasn't looking up to Sony and Lucasfilm's standards, is what it sounds like right now. But yeah, it was pretty crazy news. Shout out to everybody joining still right now. We got Geezer Prime, what's up? Def Leopard, Shane, how's it going? Jeremy Brown, what's up? Yeah, Aspyr, that's the studio that gave the big ass project to. Yeah, they just port, they don't create games. Yeah, I never understood that 100%. I made comments about that, and people were like, "Oh no, they can handle it," and I'm like, "Are you okay?" I mean, it just seems like a weird choice for such a big game, because, like, porting it, like I said, is not the same thing. And shout out to Mr. Jonah Dark as well. Thanks, bro. He says, hope all is well. Glad to see you back on air. Yeah, EA is making 3 Star Wars games. Jasper says one of those is Jedi Survivor. I think one of them is supposed to be like a strategy game. Isn't it like it's supposed to be like a Star Wars grand strategy game? And I can't remember what the other one was rumored to be. What's up, Micah Ford? Says, how's it going, Speculators? What's up, man? Yeah, I don't know. Like, what do y'all see for the future of this game? Like, what do y'all see for the future of this franchise? Do you think this game is going to ever see the light of day? Do you think it's just going to be put on hold temporarily and kind of reworked and then restart the development? We may see it in 2025 or later. One way or another, it's a ways away. I mean, it's mid 2022 right now. So if they're saying the more expected target, that's like, you know, 3 years away. I mean, that's not a. I mean, it's gonna be a wait for sure. And now this is a game I think would be worth potentially waiting for, but they got to get the development right. And maybe Saber could handle it. Maybe they can. I'm not sure, but it's gonna be interesting to see what they choose. Now, Embracer Group owns lots more studios now. Do they decide that they want to move development somewhere else within all of their other studios that they have? Who knows exactly what's going to go down? I think supposedly what's going on right now is everybody's kind of on hold and waiting further instructions. So yeah, I don't know what's going on, guys. Crazy. Yeah, the great game from Quantic Dreams is David Cage's game, the Star Wars game. That Star Wars Eclipse, I think. Joanna Dark. Yeah, that one looks pretty cool. The one that with the trailer that I had seen. There's so many. It was one thing. Disney is like letting everybody make stuff right now, right? Disney's like, or Lucasfilm, whatever. Like, hey, you guys make all the Star Wars stuff, and like the Disney's got their Marvel stuff going out to Sony and all these other things and stuff. It's like, personally, I want Xbox to get involved in that. I don't know if it's gonna be for this game, excuse me, but maybe it could be for like, I've been pitching this. I've been saying I want this, guys. I don't know if anybody else feels it too, but I want an X-Men game on Xbox. It's just a perfect match made in heaven. How is there not an Xbox big? How is there not a big X-Men game in general right now? Right? X-Men is one of the biggest franchises out there in all of comic books and Marvel, and like, really X-Men is way bigger than the Avengers. It's just been underutilized in film, right? Avengers is huge now because of the MCU, but before that, X-Men was like the face of Marvel's groups, right? Like as far as big superhero groups, and the whole mutant thing is so original with what Marvel does. And I grew up on X-Men, and to see like it not really utilized with gaming. I know like Sony's doing the Wolverine game, but like it just fits. You got the X-Men, Xbox, right? Now that's the obvious, but also if you really want to look at what X-Men's all about, and then what Xbox is and Microsoft are all about right now, both of them are spreading this really big message of inclusivity and all these different things, right? Like that's one of the biggest messages across X-Men is acceptance, right? And that just the thread follows all the way through X-Men's story. And Xbox and Microsoft is all about that. Everyone should play and everyone can play everywhere, all this kind of stuff. And it just, even the messaging fits. So I personally, I say, hey, go to Embracer Group. They got IDO Montreal now. They just launched Guardians of the Galaxy. What do you say that IDO Montreal makes an X-Men game in the vein of Guardians of the Galaxy, but even bigger with a bigger budget, right? Like, it seems Embracer Group is willing to do exclusive games as well because of this Sony deal that they had for Knights of the Old Republic. So I'm saying, hey, Xbox, go for it. Do that, or you go internally, one of your in-house studios. There's lots of options, but like you got to take a chance somewhere with one of these superhero franchises. Maybe they don't, but maybe they don't. But I personally would love to see that. Shout out again to John TJ with a $10 super chat. He says, I gotta ask Mav7, which Star Wars game are you most excited for? Don't forget, especially EA is making a RTS Star Wars. I'm happy if it's the people that make Command and Conquer. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be Westwood Studios, because I don't even know if they exist anymore, to be honest with you. I don't know who worked on the Command and Conquer remaster, but as far as RTS goes, if I could get a traditional RTS like a Command and Conquer with Star Wars, I would be flipping out, especially if it came to console and PC. Now, if it's just something that's like one of these huge grand strategy games, that's cool too. I know there's a lot of people more that like that stuff, and I think that's kind of more what it's going to be. I'm excited for it regardless. I think it'll be cool. EA is doing a lot of different things right now, and we'll see. You know, EA is also supposedly making this Black Panther game, so EA is all in on this licensing deals with Disney right now. Subtalos Ray RWK88, how's it going on? What's going on? Lord Master Jasper says X-Men. What's is that? Was that one of those old 2000 movies? What is that? Is that one of those old 2000 movies? Come on, man. Jasper, you're not too old to know X-Men. You're not that young. Sub Il Ray Tito. X-Men says El Ray Tito says X-Men would be the perfect fit. I agree. Sam Walton says it sounds like the direction Sony is trying to go with having their own MCU in games. Yeah, I think Sony's doing a fantastic job, in specifically Insomniac. I'm going to be real curious to see if other Sony studios start taking on the mantle of like first party studios of some of these Marvel games and stuff like that, because if they really go that approach, because Spider-Man is huge for them, you know, it's really huge. John TJ with the $5 super chat says a 2-player online co-op X-Men heavy dark gritty story game would be awesome for Xbox. Phil needs to wake up. So much money on the table. Yeah, here's the thing. They got the Indiana Jones thing coming, which is a great get, and that was already kind of spearheaded by Bethesda before that acquisition even took place. But you know what? That could be a really cool game, and that maybe would start the trend of licensing. The other thing is, once this Activision Blizzard deal goes through, Activision isn't known for doing a lot of licensed stuff now, but in their history, they did a lot of licensed games, right? That's what Activision was mainly known for. They were doing licensed games out the ass all the time, especially before Call of Duty got so huge, right? So maybe Activision could get back into that a little bit, but something I think that Xbox doesn't really utilize because they focus on their own IP more. I would like to see a little bit of a trend shift with that, where they have so much IP now and they have so many different studios, they can still do both, right? They can have one or two licensed things from these different brands and games, and they've started to dabble even with Pirates of the Caribbean, right? They did the Pirates of the Caribbean with Sea of Thieves. That was really cool. So maybe they're starting to open up to that stuff. Again, appreciate you, John TJ, with another $5 super chat. Says Phil needs to go get all, and I mean all of WB, get all DC. Yeah, that would be a huge move. We've talked about that several times on this channel, about what WB Discovery would mean if they were able to get the whole shebang, or even just the game studios, because I think those are going to eventually be moved. Mr. Johnny Dark says I love Prototype to come back. Prototype would be sick. Absolutely sick. What's up, Bob? How's it going, man? I know you've been out and about all over the place, Bob. It's good to see you, man. Hopefully, I don't know if you decided on an apartment or house or whatever, but hope that's going well for you, man. Let's see. So next up, guys, besides this main topic, we also got another one, right? We got another main topic that kind of blew my mind today. Now, this is something that's speaking of IDO Montreal, where we're kind of talking about that. That's a perfect segue, because guess what? Square Enix sucks. And this is something that we've talked about for a long time, about how they didn't know how to handle their Western divisions and everything, right? And their Western divisions were always criticized, and publicly in the earnings calls, and just with random nonsense interviews and stuff from some of the Square Enix high ups about underperformance on their games and all this stuff. So we've had this discussion for a couple years now about how Square Enix treated their Western devs, and a lot of people had thought they were going to move on from it. And there's a lot of speculation about maybe Xbox could get it because the Crystal Dynamics was working on Perfect Dark, and it would be a good fit and all these things. But, you know, then Xbox got tied up with the Activision Blizzard deal, and now it looks like this whole thing, what happened was Square Enix was like, okay, we're just going to start shedding weight now. We're going to get rid of them, and we're going to sell Crystal Dynamics and IDO Montreal and Tomb Raider and all those things for $300 million to Embracer Group, which was, wow. When that happened, I was shocked, because the dollar amount for the IPs alone, I felt like would be worth that. But what's interesting today, because that already happened a couple months ago now, what happened today was there's an interview from a the IDO Montreal founder, right? Now, IDO Montreal, I'm going to read this. This is from GameIndustry.biz, but the founder of IDO Montreal had some very interesting things to say that kind of correlate what everybody has been saying about Square Enix for so long, and it's great to see it actually from an actual dev that had the founder of the studio that had close ties with Square Enix and was obviously in all these discussions and stuff, and hear his take on the whole situation. It's absolutely amazing to actually read this. So it was not often that developers in the industry kind of give this kind of information in an interview, and I thought it was absolutely awesome. So I'm going to read this article here from GameIndustry.biz, and this is from James Batchelor, editor-in-chief. So he said, on May 2nd, 2022, Stefan Diostos, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, began receiving emails and phone calls from former employees. The shared tone was a request for advice and perspective. What's happening? Is it a good sign, or should we be worried? These messages, of course, referred to the shock news that Square Enix had sold Crystal Dynamics, Eidos Montreal, and Square Enix Montreal, plus all the IP the trio of studios collectively held, to Embracer Group for a bewilderingly low $300 million. Yeah, well, Xbox missed it because they're tied up there with Activision Blizzard. That's what I think anyway. I was shocked that they let it go for that low, though, because $300 million, you don't even have to. I think it's like over $1 billion or something like that is when things get really scrutinized. But maybe they were worried about this causing issues with their other one that is being scrutinized, right? So it says that even though Diostos was surprised by the price tag, the Eidos Montreal founder wasn't terribly surprised at how the studio's relationship with Square Enix turned out, saying the roots of its demise were evident even before he left the company in 2013. So way back in 2013, he's saying he saw this coming, right? So way back in 2013, you're talking about the beginning, the end of the 360 PS3 era, the beginning of the Xbox One PS4 era. He left the studio and he had already seen this coming, right? He's saying this, saying the roots of its demise were evident even before then. So that's pretty incredible. He says it was a trajectory that could be predicted. He tells GameIndustry.biz, I left because things were missing at head office. Eidos has a great tradition of development teams, pre-Square Enix, but they don't have superior knowledge of how to sell their games, and that was quite clear. You could look at all the great games that Eidos did, and apart from Tomb Raider back then, that was a whole different era. The Hitmans and all those could have been a 6, 7, 8 million unit projects. Deus Ex could have been that also. I agree. Those games are known as historically fantastic games, but they didn't ever do massive numbers. He said, we hit good numbers, don't get me wrong, but I always felt that the way to sell games that Eidos used were so traditional and conventional that it wasn't innovative, and it was always underselling the quality of the games. I agree with that as well. So some of those Tomb Raider games didn't really hit the mark for me, especially those earlier ones, right? Before the reboot. However, I agree with all he's saying because of those Hitman games and all those other games. I think they were just like really good, but they just were not selling right. He says that he hoped when Square Enix purchased Eidos in 2009 that would change things. Apparently it didn't, right? Eidos Montreal was founded 2 years before Square Enix acquired the UK publisher, and at that time was only the fourth major studio in Montreal, alongside Behavior Interactive and teams from Ubisoft and Electronic Arts. The studio is structured to have 3 production pipelines, kicking off with revivals of the Deus Ex and Thief series, while helping Crystal Dynamics reboot Tomb Raider by handling the multiplayer component as its third project. Now, he goes on to say, it was clear that the main purpose of Eidos Montreal was to increase capacity of production or development capacity within the group, because Crystal Dynamics was branded like a mono project studio, right? So like make one game, right? You're making one game. While Eidos Montreal was like increasing the capacity to be able to make these other things, right? As was Eidos Interactive was a mono project studio. DS just explains. Montreal was there to save the back catalog. It was clear that we had great IPs that were sleeping on the shelf. Legacy of Kain that was discussed but wasn't as strong as Deus Ex and Thief, which both also got new games, right? 2011's Deus Ex Human Revolution, the studio's first release, garnered critical acclaim and put IDO Montreal on the map. That was a absolutely fantastic game. I really enjoyed that game. The 2014 Return of Thief was less well received, although Diesta says that game remains one of his favorite projects. That's not a bad game, right? And maintains an extra 9 months could have produced a much better product. So he's basically saying if they had more time, that Thief game could have been a lot better than it was. Again, so that's another maybe slight jab at Square. Who knows? He said, we did our best and we struggled, and that's life and development in games, he says. You don't hit it off all the time, and we were close, but just missing some finishing touches. It continues, the Deus Ex development team was one of the strongest that he's assembled, and they were really united. They knew the challenges. With Thief, he didn't have that luxury to have a core group of people that had worked together previously. So he went to recruit strong people, very strong people, but they didn't have the opportunity to work together on previous games. And that may be could be one of the reasons why it wasn't as smooth as Deus Ex. But here's where things are going to start to get a little interesting, right? Diestas was also president of Square Enix, and sister studio Crystal Dynamics signed a multi-project deal with Marvel, which is eventually led to the beleaguered Marvel's Avengers and last year's Guardians of the Galaxy, which, despite being well received by critics, undershot initial expectations according to the publisher. Yeah, again, publisher going out there to make sure that everybody know that it didn't succeed to their expectations. Maybe at the time the deal was signed, the superhero thing was a big thing. It still is, but there is some fatigue with superheroes. This is where I kind of disagree with him a little bit. Like, if you make a badass superhero game, it's going to sell well, right? And if you market it right as well, because there's been a lack of proper marketing with a lot of projects, but there's also been some not as good games, right? So I would say Marvel's Avengers just kind of missed the mark a lot, but I don't necessarily blame Crystal Dynamics for that. It still is, but there's some fatigue with superheroes, and especially in games, very few manage to be successful with superheroes. There's always Batman from the guys at Rocksteady. There was Spider-Man, but out of the people that have done it, the success rate of superhero games is not good. Well, you talk about those games are on another level than the other superhero games that are out there. So that's what I'm kind of saying. Like, it's about what you put out there, right? Maybe it was the easy way out. They might have thought that selling a superhero game is easier than a conventional game. But where I find this interesting is it sounds like this maybe isn't something that they wanted to do, right? It sounds like maybe this isn't something that they were like all in about. Like IDO Montreal was like not, hey, yeah, let's do this Guardians of the Galaxy game. It seems like it was a Square decision purely, and it was just placed on their shoulders, right? However, I mean, they made that game. That's a great game. Guardians of the Galaxy to a lot of people was game of the year last year. So you can't knock what they produced. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. This is where we start talking about the things that we've been discussing with Square Enix for a long time. So Square Enix has become notorious for declaring multi-million selling games to be disappointments. Yep. And Diestas reports that this extended behind the scenes as well. So this is what's really got my attention, everybody. He says that this report extended behind the scenes as well. So you're talking about internal turmoil over the lack of sales from the Western division from Square Enix themselves when they're put on the shoulders to make these games, these superhero games, and then potentially not given enough time and also other things. So we're going to talk about this. He says he recalls a meeting regarding the company's financial performance for 2012. So this is like way back. This is before he left. Maybe this is one of the reasons why he left. He says where the Eidos group of studios was expected to generate $65 million in profit. Instead, he was told the developers had lost $65 million that year. He says, we were dumbfounded, he says, especially because his studio didn't have any deliverables for that year. So basically meaning they were expected to turn a profit on a year where they weren't even launching a game. So he's saying like that didn't make any sense to him. He was bewildered at the reports that came out from them that they were being a disappointment, right? So again, he says that he recalls a meeting regarding the company's financial performance for 2012, where the Eidos group of studios was expected to generate 65 million in profit. Instead, he was told the developers had lost 65 million. He says, we were dumbfounded, he says, especially because my studio didn't have any deliverables for that year. And he also says he began receiving messages from the team worrying about the fate of the studio and repeatedly called on management in London to discuss a solution, only to receive silence. He said the pressure started to build, and the employees and my employees towards me towards my superiors. So he was getting pressure from the employees. He was putting pressure on his superiors, and there was basically no answers, right? And so if you're in a management position and you have everybody asking you questions and it's out of your control, you're going to the people that are ahead of you being like, hey, what's our solutions here? What are our expectations? What are we supposed to do? People are worried and you get silence back, right? It's like, okay. He says, I think when people are in a crisis situation where there's a lot of situations, you do see their core behavior or values. And I didn't like what I saw. There was a lack of leadership, courage, and communication. And when you don't have those basic things, no employee can do their job correctly, especially when you're heading a studio. I completely agree with that, right? When you don't know what the hell's going on and you can't get any communication to you, and there's like a lack of like people willing to go out on your behalf and fight for you as well, like, and believe in what you're doing, it's hard to believe in that company. You know what I mean? It really is. And this is like, this article is like, oh my gosh, you know, it's like, says everything that everybody's been saying about them is like completely true. So he was losing hope that Square Enix Japan would bring great things to Eidos. He said he was losing confidence in the headquarters in London and their annual fiscal reports. Japan always added one or two phrases saying, we were disappointed with certain games. They didn't reach expectations, and they did that strictly for certain games that were done outside of Japan. I mean, that just tells you everything. Like, they just like looked at the Western studios as like numbers, right? They were just like a balance sheet, right? Profit, loss, like, okay, start that project, do this project. We think this would be great. You should do superheroes or whatever. And like just expect results without having any kind of like hands-on communication with them, knowing actually what's going on in the day-to-day stuff, not even maybe knowing when their games are going to launch, because you're expecting profits in a year where they don't even have a game to release, right? And then you have to go, and every time they have an earnings report, hear about how disappointed they are in your studio's success. What does that do for morale at the studio? You know what I mean? And also to go on and to see how poorly marketed the projects are that you do put out there, things like that. I'm adding those words. He didn't say that himself, but that's some of the criticism I've been having over how they showcase Guardians of the Galaxy and other games in the past. The decisions that they made to take timed exclusive deals that was going to limit sales and then come out after the fact and tell everybody that they were disappointed in the sales. Well, you limit yourself to one platform, especially if you look at the Tomb Raider games, right? You're limiting yourself to a platform that was not very successful at the time, and you come out there after those games came out and says it was a failure. But those games are so highly rated, right? So stop making stupid business decisions, Square. And maybe your games have a better chance at succeeding, especially these great ones that are beloved by critics alike. It seems like Square did not know how to market their games. They never should have acquired them to begin with, because they didn't know what they were going to do with them. They just looked at them as, hey, they're really talented, and we're going to potentially be able to capitalize off of this. We're going to be hands off, look at the balance sheet, and see what's going to go. But the hands off approach stops when you're talking about, you're making superhero game, you're making this, you're making that, launch this game 9 months ahead of when you want to, and then or you're going to make it only for this platform, etc., etc., etc. And then you go and you bash them on their sales reports and say that they're disappointing. Guys, that's got to be demoralizing. It's got to be absolutely demoralizing. What's up, Chris? How's it going, man? Yeah, KOTOR should have been given to Obsidian. Supposedly, Xbox passed on the front on that game. I don't know how the project ever got started to begin with. So there's reports about Xbox moving on from it, but I don't know exactly the timeline there. DSS left IDO Montreal in summer 2013. Crystal Dynamics studio head Daryl Gallagher left at the end of 2015. And in 2017, IO Interactive successfully negotiated a management buyout. It seems like there's a mass exodus from the high-ups, and the founders of these studios wanted out of Square. And it was amazing. I remember when IO separated from Square and they managed to get the hit NIP. It was like Square didn't want it. It's crazy, man. After Square began looking for a buyer to take, after Square Enix began looking for a buyer to take the studio off its hands. Okay, so even the group's biggest success, the rebooted Tomb Raider trilogy, was in decline, with 2018's Shadow of the Tomb Raider receiving lower review scores than its two forebears. That's a good game. I think people just kind of sick of it at that point. And then 2020's long-awaited Marvel Avengers was poorly received. Again, that game, I could go on a huge list of Square's faults alone in that. He says it's a train that is slowing down and needs some injection of energy or money or something, but the train is slowing down. And it's unfortunate because there are a lot of good people in those studios. He says if he read between the lines, Square Enix Japan was not as committed as they hoped initially. And there are rumors, obviously, that with all these activities of mergers and acquisitions, that Sony would really like to have Square Enix within their wheelhouse. He heard rumors that Sony said they really interested in Square Enix Tokyo, but not the rest. So he thinks that Square Enix CEO Yosuke Matsuda-san put it like a garage sale. So basically getting rid of the studios that Sony didn't want, like as just getting rid of them, whatever we can get. Right, we'll take what we can get. Like who's got some money, please, for these things. We want to offload them to make ourselves more attractive, right? Wow. I mean, he says that they have about 1,000 staff. Eidos has about 1,000, and they have basically Borderlands and others, and Eidos has 5 times the IPs. So why 4 times less? So you're talking about the price difference, right? Because Gearbox was bought for 1.3 billion, and he says they have about 1,000 staff, and Eidos has about 1,000, and they have basically Borderlands and others, and Eidos has 5 times IP. So this is like, why was it sold for so cheap? Again, he's saying garage sale type stuff. Just find a quick buyer because something's going down. Remember, also Sony just hired that mergers and acquisitions lawyer. So I think stuff's going down with Square, right? It seems like too many different things are adding up. You got a former founder of IDO Montreal talking about that. He's even heard rumors about that. So, but he goes on to say that it was a train wreck in slow motion to his eyes anyway. It's predictable that the train was not going to a good direction, and maybe that justified 300 million. That's really not a lot. That doesn't make sense. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm going to leave this article. But wow, I mean. Yeah, I don't know what you guys think, but for me, this is just like makes Square look like really bad. It's not saying that maybe IDO Montreal and Crystal Dynamics and these other studios maybe didn't have some blame in this, with maybe some of their games not being as good as they could have been, but it seems like mismanagement of your studios, mismanagement of your IPs, mismanagement of your marketing, and then blaming the devs, right? That's one thing that Square Enix pretty much did, was they blamed the studios, talked about their underperformance and everything, and in public and interviews and everything like that, and pretty much lowering the value of it as well. You keep talking about how shitty things are. You think people are going to want it? Think people are going to like be fighting hand over fist to buy it? No, that goes to the garage sale price, right? It just seems like a lack of foresight. I don't know exactly how to put it in perspective. Now, Square's doing a lot of other good things, right? With their Japanese studios and stuff. You got all these like remasters and remakes coming out on these classic IP. You got a bunch of JRPGs coming out. You got new projects kicking off like Diofield Chronicles as well. It's coming to Xbox soon. Then you have these Sony exclusives that they keep making deals for as well. And you got some Nintendo exclusives. And I don't necessarily understand Square's business strategy. Making, especially not ever bringing Final Fantasy VII Remake to Xbox, because you're kind of like abandoning a potential audience, unless it makes sense that you're only focused really on Sony right now because that's where you think you're going to be headed anyway. So, Square at this point, I think, could end up becoming a Sony studio or Sony publisher. And I personally, I don't know what you guys think. Do you guys think that Sony should buy Square? Do you think that would be a good fit? I personally don't have any issues with that whatsoever. I think maybe a change in management there would be a good thing. And I couldn't imagine, with Sony's like attention to quality and the big budgets that they have and the time they give for their games to be made, I could foresee some amazing RPGs coming out of Square. And maybe it would fix some of the problems that they do have. Now, what I'm really even more curious about, though, is like I'm worried about those IDO Montreal. I'm worried about Crystal Dynamics and stuff. I think they're going to be fine. But as you've seen, like Embracer Group, even today, like with the news about Aspyr's game, Aspyr, being put on hold. So what does that mean for other studios at Embracer Group? Is everything going to be scrutinized like that as well? Was that a Sony decision? Was that a Lucasfilm decision? It seems like it was probably Sony and Lucasfilm not being happy with it. But I'm curious, like, what's Crystal Dynamics going to be working on now? I know they got the Tomb Raider game that they're doing, and they're also working on Perfect Dark. But what's beyond that, and what's next for IDO Montreal there? I think that they were improperly utilized at Square. They didn't have the proper expectations Square did for them. Not like they understand with their hands-on approach to their Japanese studios. Now, if Sony gets those Japanese studios, will we see continued support on the Switch? Right? Because there's a lot of games that they're putting out there on Switch that are doing really successful. Are they going to remain multi-plat and release games on all platforms? I don't know. I think if Square Enix is bought by Sony, you're going to see a resurgence of big budget AAA type JRPG type games. What's up, Big Cloud? How's it going, man? Mr. Join at Dark, thanks for the $5 super chat. Says, Mav, do you think that Sony would give Square Enix the autonomy that Bungie got if they purchased Square making multi-plat games? The only reason I would think it's possible is because of the Switch. I don't think Sony cares about Xbox and releasing games on Xbox. Square apparently doesn't care too much about it themselves anyway, right? But they have a huge market with Nintendo and with the Switch, and with a lot of these smaller JRPGs and even these remakes. We got several of them that they keep putting out. I think Live Alive was just dropped, and people are really digging that. It's kind of a classic Square game, right? And I think that's one of the things about the Switch that has there's a unique space there with some of the Square games that are on that device. And to take those off of that would be interesting. I don't know if they would want to go that route because they have so many of those little type old school retro style JRPGs that they could keep pumping out that sell like crazy on the Switch. So I would not think that Sony would move 100% away from that, but I think there would still be a new focus on big time AAA style JRPGs in the vein of like the Final Fantasy VII remakes and stuff like that. Right. It's hard to say, man. Sup Invader. How's it going, man? That's a good question, Mr. Joanna Dark. What do you think? Would you think they'd be given the autonomy? I mean, Bungie basically said, hey, we're going multi-plat, right? Now, the language on the FAQ for Bungie pretty much said their next IP is going multi-plat as well and going to be where their communities are. So Bungie is going to be pretty much remaining like independent within Sony, but being published by Sony. And I think part of that is they're going to really be helping Sony figure out the live service games model and how to operate with that stuff, because Sony's making a transition into that right now, right? Um, Ballantone says give more resources to Tango and have them report to Matt Booty instead of ZeniMax. Tango Gameworks is no slouch, right? They have another project that's unannounced right now that's being made by the Evil Within 2 director. I think it's John Johannes. So there's still some surprises yet to come from Tango Gameworks as well. But yeah, what do you guys think about this? You think Sony is going to buy Square? It was interesting that the former IDO Montreal founder said this and has pretty much cemented to everybody that Square sucked as much as we all thought they did, especially with the Western studios. Absolutely crazy. But that's not all the news we got today. Those are the ones that I put on the thumbnail in the description and everything. But there was also some other things to talk about too, because we got Microsoft's earnings report, which I found very interesting, right? So this is on theverge.com. So they got the financial results today. It says Microsoft posted the fourth quarter of its 2022 financial results, reporting revenue at $51.9 billion and a net income of $16.7. Revenue is up 12% and net income has increased by just 2%. But while revenue was up, Microsoft saw some of its core businesses, including Windows and Xbox, start to slip. Now, this is obviously possibly because of the lack of big first-party type games right now, right? I mean, there was we got As Dust Falls, you got the Hot Wheels DLC for Microsoft, but first-party wise, nothing major and nothing coming this year. First-party wise, I got a lot of third-party games that are coming to Game Pass and stuff like that. You got second party like As Dust Falls. You got a first party game with Pentiment. Nothing that's going to set the world on fire and get people to go out there and be like, yeah, let's go. Like, but the interesting thing was that I'd read in one of these articles is that the revenue dip because of the lack of the small drop in console sales and the small drop in gaming revenue was helped being offset by the increase and by Game Pass, right? So Game Pass apparently is up, but they didn't specify the numbers for that. So I'm really curious what that is. At the end of the day, they were expecting a dip for sure, and it doesn't seem like it was as bad as what they thought it was going to be. And I'm curious what first quarter, second quarter, third quarter 2023 is going to look like, because that's when we're going to get some massive games, and I wonder if that's going to cause things to kind of explode with the Xbox ecosystem. You also have the holiday season coming this year, with having that cheaper Series S console out there. It's $299. You maybe be able to see it around the holidays for $249. They're readily available right now. You also have Verizon now making Xboxes available via All Access as a new thing as well. So you're going to be seeing, I think, a push for more Xboxes out there, especially this holiday, even without the God of War Ragnarok type title. You have still a very compelling thing with Game Pass, and you have a lot of third-party timed exclusives or exclusives that are going to be in that subscription service day one. And you could potentially be getting a console this holiday for $249, $279, or maybe nothing up front if you do something like the Verizon deal. So pretty interesting news all today from Xbox. It says all eyes are now on Intel's planned price increases of its CPUs and chips and how they might affect the PC market as well. So that's going to be really interesting to keep its hands on. Also, Surface was down, I believe. Here's specifically on the Xbox side. He says on the Xbox side, hardware revenue fell 11%, alongside a 6% dip in Xbox content and services revenue. Microsoft attributed the services declines to lower engagement hours and monetization. Basically, they have no new games coming out, and also maybe Halo Infinite's lack of content could be driving that lack of engagement hours and monetization as well. That being their main tentpole franchise. Also, this Hot Wheels DLC just launched, so I'm curious if that'll help with any of those kind of things. But it says across both first and third party titles. So that's across first and third party. So it's not just first party games that have been seeing a slight decline. It's not massive, right? Overall gaming revenue at Microsoft declined 7% year over year. And this is also kind of par for the course right now with several publishers. Because of COVID, they had such huge spikes and stuff. Microsoft managed last quarter, I think, to even have a slight increase. But then since then, we've had the announcement of the delays of Starfield and such and so on. So it kind of makes sense that there would be a small decline now. The decline you're seeing in Xbox hardware is partly a reflection of the fact we had that launch about 2 years ago. So with the supply constraints that we had seen over the last couple of years, it has kind of extended out that period for consoles. Says good enough. Oh wait, say good enough. I don't even understand what the hell that is. Is that good enough? The person that was speaking, I don't know. We're still seeing strong demand, but coming off those highs that we saw in the last couple of years with the launch, right? So they're basically saying, hey, we're past the launch phase now, and it's not like people are like, I can't find one anywhere. You know, it's like now people are it's becoming more of a regular demand type situation. Despite the quarterly hardware revenue decline, Nadella says Microsoft has been the market leader in North America for 3 quarters in a row among next-gen consoles, which means this past quarter, as well as the previous 2 quarters, they have outsold the PlayStation 5 in North America, which if you follow like VG charts or anything like that, is kind of par for the course. It's been going on for a while now. Whether it's because of lack of supply by Sony, I think Sony actually outperformed them the past couple weeks in North America. So kind of widening that gap again, because Microsoft was within like about 20,000 consoles have actually taken the lead in North America. Now it stands back at like around 45,000 consoles in North America. PlayStation has advantage right now. So where they were closing the gap, now it's starting to spread a little bit, but still with this quarter, they managed to outsell them over the past 3 months. So I think it's gonna be really interesting this holiday to see what kind of happens with because of the price point and value versus God of War Ragnarok. I mean, let's be real. That's what it is, right? And how many PS5s are they going to be able to put out there? Are they going to be having a little bit of holdback to make sure there's plenty available this holiday when God of War launches? That'll be really interesting to see what PlayStation does. Microsoft's guidance for fiscal Q1 2023 sees gaming revenue and Xbox content and services revenue both declining again next quarter, though. So they're saying that they anticipate this next quarter is also going to be going down a little bit. But regardless, they also had its best fiscal year ever in terms of revenue. So 2022 to 2021, this past fiscal year was the best ever for Xbox, which is a really positive thing. Microsoft is still on the uptrend, even though you're seeing slight declines for these couple quarters coming up, as was anticipated by them. So it says last quarter, Microsoft received 10 million people had used the company's xCloud gaming service. That's actually surprising to me because it's kind of like a niche tech right now, and it's not like, oh, everybody's playing the cloud. 10 million is quite a bit. I think it's only going to increase and increase, especially as the technology gets better. And that's bound to have grown even higher thanks to Fortnite now being the only game that's free to stream on the service. I agree. He says that over 4 million people have streamed Fortnite to date, including over 1 million who were new to the ecosystem. So Fortnite alone brought 1 million new players to the Xbox ecosystem via playing on the cloud. That's big, right? I mean, it's not the most massive thing, but you're talking about a game that's already been out for forever now, to launch it on your cloud service and to get 1 million new users out of that. That shows that mindset is going to work. And if they can do this with more franchises, more games, you can potentially start seeing more people gravitate towards the Xbox ecosystem, especially with the cloud and the availability everywhere. He said Microsoft hasn't provided an update on Xbox Game Pass subscribers this quarter after the service grew to 25 million in January following the holiday releases of Age of Empires 4, Forza Horizon 5, and Halo Infinite. That's when they were on fire with first-party releases. However, right, this year it sucks ass. I will say that. That's not coming from the quote. That's me. 2022 sucks ass for first-party releases. However, it is what it is. 2023, yeah, let's get it next year, right? Microsoft also isn't discussing its planned $68.7 billion acquisition of Activision Blizzard any further today. The purchase is expected to close in fiscal year 2023. So that means from the end of this month onward, right? I mean, anytime. I mean, into last month, I guess. Like anytime, it could potentially close. We have no idea exactly when, but most likely, a lot of people are guessing early next year. With the latest being, the end of the fiscal year. But things seem positive right now with that, so who knows exactly when it's going to go down. He says the purchase is expected to close in fiscal year 2023, and it will see Microsoft publish franchises like Warcraft, Diablo, Overwatch, Call of Duty, and Candy Crush. Think about the revenue stream that's going to cause on Xbox. It's going to be absolutely massive. I'm curious how that Riot Games PC Game Pass deal is going to do as well. That should be pretty interesting. It said outside of gaming and Windows, Microsoft's Office Cloud and server products continue to grow at impressive rates. Okay, blah 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 blah. All right. So overall, it's pretty much what was expected for the earnings report. No huge surprises there. The whole industry is kind of in a slight decline because of how high everything got with COVID and the next gen launches. Right now is kind of like a settling phase, especially with Xbox not having any massive first party games. But besides that, I mean, we had a lot of interesting talking points today. I know me and Pong are going to talk about a lot of this on Thursday. I want to give a shout out to some more people in the chat because I've been rambling for a while reading that article. Again, shout out to Mr. Xbot. Alvin, what's up, Alvin? How's it going, man? Focus Active, how are you doing? Focus Active said Sony Square FTC should mandate full multiplat support. Maybe that could be like a new thing, right? If they mandate it with Activision Blizzard, then maybe they would have to mandate it going forward to everything else. I don't know how that goes. And I don't know if it's going to be fully mandated with Activision Blizzard even. I think it's going to be some specifics potentially there. But it'll be interesting to see. My thought and the whole thing was that the whole mergers and acquisitions and consolidation thing is just ultimately changing people's businesses over time. And we're going to be seeing less potential talk of exclusivity in the future, whereas you're playing your games on so many different devices anyway in Xbox's ecosystem. It's going to be interesting to see what happens like 5 years from now. I don't know what the answer is going to hold, but there's going to be a lot of massive franchises and games coming out in like those years, like 2026, 2027, 2028. And it's hard to predict what the landscape is going to look like once all of these acquisitions and mergers and stuff keep happening, right? So I would never say anything is concrete right now with multiplats, exclusivity, or anything like that. It's just everything's too up in the air. I know in the near short term, for sure, like exclusivity on Xbox is a for sure thing with like brand new franchises, and also with anything Bethesda, Game Studios, and all these games. That's a for sure thing. And then, but you go way in the future, it's like I don't know. It's just too hard to predict right now. Sony themselves is going more multi-platform. They're going to have Bungie's games going multi-plat as well. It's interesting. The industry is just changing. It's absolutely crazy. A shout out to let's see, RWK. What's up, man? Again, Tony Grasso. Thanks for hanging out. You've been here since the beginning, bro. Game Plateau says fumbled his fears. That's in regards to Aspyr's. That's the Old Republic game. Yeah, it seems they have fumbled the ball, and we'll see what happens there. Sub Ghost Fixer, how you doing, man? Says hope everyone's day going good. Gogol Poe, shout out to you. 2023 can't be drier than 2022. Oh, the first half of 2023 is going to be absolutely insane. And especially if you include like multiplats as well, but like if you just include first party for Microsoft, you got Starfield. Then you had what was the Forza Motorsport? I think at some point within the next several months, we're gonna get news of the Age of Empires on console. Even if you just put those two games alone, right? Even just those two games alone, Starfield and Forza Motorsport. That's a good quarter. That's a good like 6 month window, right? I mean, they're gonna have plenty of awesome stuff. Oh, right on. RWK says you'll be out at the Hilton Lakefront this weekend. Is Top Golf fun? I mean, to be honest, I've been invited several times to go play Top Golf, and I have never actually partook. I never. I probably it would be a lot of fun. I've heard that it's fun, but I'd rather go bowling. I don't know if it's me. It seems like it's kind of like a bowling type activity. You hang out, you drink beer, you shoot the shit, and you either roll balls or you hit balls with a club, right? So I guess it depends on which one you prefer. I know one of those is in air conditioning, which is the bowling, so that's why I prefer that. And you get nice cushy seats and everything. But I've heard Top Golf is extremely expensive. That's another reason why I've kind of stayed away from there. But yeah, I'm sure it's a blast. I know people that go and they have a blast. Jay Vargas says Top Golf is amazing and more fun than you would think it is. After a few drinks, it gets very entertaining. I'm sure I would probably be the guy that like falls off the thing up top. You know, if I got drunk, I'd probably swing and stumble. Google Post says Aspyr is not equipped to make a good remake of KOTOR, in your opinion. I was questioning that from the get-go. Again, like I said earlier in the stream, like I was kind of told, you know, they're used to making Star Wars stuff, you know, but I'm like, yeah, those are like ports, you know, it's not the same thing. It's like you go into somebody that doesn't really have a history of making huge, massive franchises and give them the duty of making the remake of one of the best games ever made, according to a lot of people, right? That's a daunting task. That's a big responsibility, you know. And I personally was surprised. I mean, I think there's only two studios I would actually personally trust with it, and that's BioWare and Obsidian. We saw what BioWare did with the Mass Effect trilogy, with Legendary Edition. Now, if you were to like say, okay, go out and make KOTOR again, you know, I don't think they could because they have so many other projects they're doing, but BioWare could pull it off if they were given the resources and time by EA. And then Obsidian, you know what they can do. I mean, they did Knights of the Old Republic 2. So they did a whole Knights of the Old Republic game. It wasn't as well received as the first one, but there's a lot of people that think that really enjoyed that game as well. They have a history with the franchise. They have a history of making big time AAA RPGs as well. So I think Obsidian could have handled it. However, they're owned by Xbox now, and apparently Xbox passed up on that project. So I don't know. There's other studios that obviously could probably handle that game. It was just shocking as hell to me when I saw who that was. And no disrespect again to the studio, but it seems like maybe the intuition was correct when you see that after the game was shown off to Lucasfilm and to Sony, that the art director and the creative director were both canned. I don't know what's going on there, right? Yeah, Jasper says a lot of big studios do start out as port studios. That's true. I mean, you see like Blue Point, right? I think they're going to be making their own games going forward as well. You've seen that across the board, but I wouldn't say that I've seen one go from like a port studio to making a remake for one of the biggest games of all time. Right? That's where it's like there's like a leap there. Like it should be more of a gradual progression. Like maybe they make something that like blows everybody away and it's like, whoa, that's amazing. You know, or maybe they make a remake of something else that's like a full remake, not just a port. And they're like, whoa, everybody's like, yeah, that's amazing. But they don't even have a history really making remakes. You know what I mean? Like, if they could pull off doing a whole big brand new game and show it off and do really, really well, and I'd be like, okay, maybe they have that opportunity or can do something with that. But I haven't seen anything from them in that vein recently, at least. Let's look at what Aspyr has done in the past. Aspyr games. So some of these games are listed on their site are not fully developed by them as well. So, all right. Yeah, these are mostly ports. So I'm going to bring this up, guys. So this is Aspyr. Again, tell me, is it Aspyr or Aspyr? Aspyr? I don't know. I'm not sure what to call them. Aspyr. All right, so here's some of the games that they've done. Now you see this. Oh wow, Knights of the Old Republic. Wow, it's but on Switch and on what is this? Steam? Is that Steam? Is that the Steam logo? I'm guessing. No, what is that? What is this logo? The A. This is like their platforms. Somebody recognize this symbol? Android. Oh, wait, no, it's not Android. iOS. It's iOS. Okay. It says up here, there's a key up top. Duh. So yeah, they have Knights of the Old Republic on iOS and Switch. Right? Porting that. Star Wars Force Unleashed, port it to the Switch. Knights of the Old Republic 2, port it to PC, Windows. You have iOS. You have Linux. Again, iOS is on here twice. I don't know if it's because there's like iPhone and iPad or what. I'm not sure why. And then there's Switch again. Then you have something called Myth Force, which is a game that was released on PC. I don't know if that's a remake or if it's a new game. Then you have Republic Commando, PlayStation and Switch. I'm thinking that's a remaster of that game. And then Star Wars Racer on Switch, PlayStation, and Xbox. I remember when that came out. That's the 64 game remaster. Myth Force is early access. The 80s called They Want Their Heroes Back. So this looks like a new game. Inspired by beloved 80s cartoons like He-Man and Thundercats, Myth Force unites swords and sorcery with gripping first-person combat in a roguelite adventure fit for Saturday mornings. Brave the dungeon alone or join forces with friends to take on an ever-changing castle of evil. Become a cartoon hero, blah, 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 blah. So, all right, here's this. I'm going to play a little trailer for this game. I don't know. Are you guys familiar with this game at all? Myth Force. Let's check it out. Digging the music. Focus says they did okay with the Civ port for Mac. Yeah. Oh, that's right. The Aspyr also is known for the game-breaking bug on the Kotor port. You're right. That just happened recently. I'm digging the 80s music. What is it? I don't know what the game looks like though. I mean, I see the cartoons and stuff, but I want to see gameplay. It's released. Oh, it's already came out. It says released on 4/20/2022. What did it come out on? On Steam, maybe? Just on PC? Okay. Epic Game Store. Oh, it's only on the. Is it an Epic Game Store exclusive potentially? All right, so let's. Is this a different trailer? I want to see gameplay. Oh, I had that TV, guys. I had this TV. I mean, one just like it. I had it as a Zenith.
The realm of Eldred is under siege by the vampire lord Daedalus. Rising up to defy his evil schemes is a band of heroes known as
Soldier up.
Okay, this gameplay. Yeah, I like the art style.
Soldier up. This is our fight now.
Enough waiting. Let the hunt begin.
Women love reformed back.
Feels like a first person. It almost looks like Borderlands-esque to me, but it says it's a roguelite,
There's
so.
the way forward.
On your guard.
Only fools trespass on my domain. You should have turned back while you still.
This is actually, people don't know, this is actually footage of the Kotor remake. And this is why it got put on hold. I'm just kidding. All right.
You only draw out your own defeat, Force Lord.
In the Saturday morning roguelike adventure.
This will suck for you.
I'd rather face an archmage than an amateur.
This forest is worse than any dark alley I ever saw.
It doesn't matter how hard the path becomes. We won't get through without confronting him. You could never hope to defeat
Yeah, I just don't see anything with this studio that screams, hey, you're going to be making the biggest, one of the best games of all time. Start with what a lot of people, one of the highest rated games of all time. What a lot of people consider their favorite game of all time. Like, this studio, like, is saying, like, okay, your guys can do it. You know? Like, I haven't seen anything from that yet. Like, this is like the only original game I think they have on their list. I mean, it looks cool. I'm not knocking this game. It looks like fun, you know, but I don't know where that decision came from of choosing this studio for KOTOR Remake. It is what it is. I mean, maybe they're capable of doing it if it comes out in 2025, 2026 and they're given the chance again, but it seems like that chance is being taken away from them. And I'm curious what is going to happen there now, right? Kate says, by the way, means actually in Jasper language. Aspyr said Aspyr, by the way, Jasper. Thanks. It's actually. Aspyr is said Aspyr. Actually. Thanks, man. Yeah, they got bought by Embracer. They had to make moves. The reports I had read earlier was like they were surprised. They were unexpectedly let go. They weren't like, they didn't decide to just move on. They showed this vertical slice and then they were fired. I haven't heard a report like that in a while. You know, like usually it's like, oh, you know, so they kind of like, hey, blah, 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 is moving on, or they kind of sweep it under the rug, you know, like, you know, moving on to new opportunities in other places and stuff like that. Or like maybe they have a meeting and decided to part ways because of directional differences. But this says they were unexpectedly let go. That was shocking to me. Don't know whose decision that was. It's like I can imagine like the Sony execs, like let's say like Jim Ryan and like the Lucasfilm people just sat in the meeting and they were looking at the KOTOR remake and they're just like, all right, show us what you got. You know, this game is going to be our biggest release coming up in a year or two, maybe, although it was slated for 2022 supposedly. But you're saying 2025, okay. You know what? Realistic expectations 2025, I understand, but let's see what you got. Let's see what you got going, right? And they take a look at it and they're like, okay, we'll get back to you. You know, hey, thanks for the demo. We'll get back to you. And then like within a week, oh, you're fired and you're fired. That's not good news. And also everybody, we're on a holding pattern now. You know, we're in a holding pattern. We don't know what we're going to do with this game now. So maybe Saber's going to take it over, maybe not. But no, we'll let you know. We'll let you know what the next moves are when we figure it out, because this shit was not right. Like I could just imagine that going down somewhat like that. It's interesting, right? Jasper says I'm still saying it wrong. Aspyr. This is a word. Aspyr definition: direct one's hopes or ambitions toward achieving something. Well, they don't spell it like that. They spell it like Aspyr. They spell it with S-P-Y-R. There's no E at the end. They're confusing me with their spelling cleverness, right? So I'll say Aspyr. It's like the Ford. There's a Ford Aspyr. So it's like that. Or Aspyr is what you're saying? Aspyr? So the studio's called Aspyr? Because that's the real word, Aspyr. I see. Maybe it's an accent. I say Aspyr, like instead of Aspire at times. Does anybody else say Aspire like that? Let's say Aspire, because I say Aspire or Aspire. I don't know. I'll say I aspire to be great. I'll say it like that. I aspire to be happy. Maybe it's a pronunciation thing. You know what I mean? I'm pretty sure it's not Aspyr though. RWK88 to show that someone's ass is engulfed in flames. Aspfire, aka ass on fire. I just, when people like do clever spellings on things, it always confuses me. Now, if it was just like Aspire or Aspire, you know, that's just a pronunciation thing. It's like potato, potato, tomato, tomato, right? Jasper, chill out, man. Holy fuck. Actually, I'll say it however the fuck I want to. I don't know if it's right. I don't know if it's Aspire. I don't know if it's Aspire. I don't know if it's Aspyr or whatever. But I'll take your word for it. Aspire. Got it. But I will know one thing. The development on that game is not going well. And I'll tell you another thing. I'm about to stream some Halo Infinite. So because of this stream, I'm gonna keep it news stuff. You know what I mean? I'm gonna end this stream. I'm gonna start a new stream here in probably about 15-20 minutes and play some Halo Infinite. Work on the Lone Wolf stuff. Maybe I'll get Kate in the chat too and see if we can't have some fun. Maybe Jasper will join them in the party and correct me on Aspire or Aspyr or whatever as well. But I appreciate everybody. We had a good turnout for this impromptu stream as well. I appreciate all of you for watching. Again, never expect anything from anybody here, but when you show up, you shout out to John TJ, get super chats, people hit the like button. Share this out and all that stuff. Appreciate everybody and never expected, but truly appreciated. And going to be having some fun later this week. We got PM in the PM on Thursday. I want to hear Pong's takes on a lot of this news, and we'll see. Maybe there's more news coming this week. And then Friday's Xbox Ultimate podcast this week will be episode number 99. Holy shit. Episode 99 of Xbox Ultimate Podcast this Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And then lots more game streams and random impromptu stuff coming up. I'll probably do more of this kind of things because you guys are awesome and make it fun for me. So I appreciate you guys. Have a good one. Take it easy. And I'll see you back here if you want to tune in for the Halo Infinite stream back in like 15-20 minutes. Have a good one. Bye.